I would say before the retreat, I felt like my life was a vice grip, and I was in a vice grip, and it kept getting tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter, and it was not good. If I had any sort of expectation going in, it would be to understand why I use alcohol to address things. Alcohol as a numbing agent, and then I went the entire year 2024 with no alcohol. I recognize now, like I was really quick to get angry and get it really intense about something and be like, all right, I'm going to put all my intensity, and the intensity often manifested itself as anger. A lot of times that was just like pouring gasoline on a fire. What I see different in me is the way I address things and the way I show up for a problem, or just, being okay with not being okay. Like, it's okay to just feel that and to just let it be. Like, I don't have to go in and fix everything.
And I remember thinking afterwards, everyone should do this.
Welcome back to Redefining Love. I'm your host, Tara. On today's episode, I have some special guests, and we have a very important topic that we are going to be talking about. But first of all, I want to ask you, imagine that you could feel so much better than you feel right now. Maybe you don't feel great at all. Maybe you feel just content, or maybe you feel good. But imagine you could feel even better. Imagine that you walked into your life and you shifted everything. You would show up, you dealt with things differently, you felt differently about yourself, about others, about the world around you. Well, this is actually possible and actually available to you. And that is what we're going to be talking about today. I have these two, Dawn and Dan. They came to me just under 2 years ago to come to a psilocybin retreat. The craziest thing is Dan didn't really understand how or why he would need this. And he had one of the most profound experiences in the entire retreat over anyone. So this is going to show you that psychedelic therapy, which is becoming such an important topic, and also studies are being done around the globe at major institutions and well-known universities, showing that the long-term effects of psilocybin therapy or psychedelic therapy are so huge for mental health, for shifting your consciousness, for connecting with yourself. I mean, the studies are endless. And this couple is a testament to the profound effects of this quote-unquote illegal substance that is actually nature's medicine. So I'm really excited to have this conversation, for them to share their vulnerable, beautiful story with us, and to show that even almost 2 years later, they are still thriving after this experience and would recommend it to anyone. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome my guests, Dawn and Dan.
I am sitting with Dawn and Dan, and Dawn and Dan were here for a retreat I guess it was a year and a half ago now. They came and did a retreat with me, psilocybin retreat, and both of which were not struggling with any severe mental health issues, just wanted to feel better. So we're going to get into a little bit about that. Really grateful to both of you to kind of share your experience. And I think this is an important conversation because a lot of people think that psilocybin is only for people who are struggling with mental health. Dawn, you came to me because you were trying to find some help for your son. And we realized that maybe it wasn't the right treatment for him at the time. And then you started to get curious about it.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
started to do your own research. And then you're like, you know what, I want to do this. And then we had to convince Dan. So do you mind sharing with me a little bit about what it was that drew you to do this experience?
Me or Dan or both?
You. Well, you to start, I guess, because you were the one who was kind of, trying to convince Dan.
Well, it wasn't that hard to convince Dan, actually. He was like, that sounds interesting. And he's usually willing to try almost anything as far as experiences and adventures and all that kind of stuff. But he was actually surprised that I was interested in it, because I'm not as adventurous. But it was my therapist that recommended it. And so I think if it hadn't been her recommending it, I would have probably dismissed it as that's not me. I don't do stuff like that.
Mhm.
But she recommended it for Justin. And then when we did a little bit more exploring with his psychiatrist and found that it wasn't a good idea quite yet for him, she said, well, why don't you do it? And then that, after being surprised, thought, okay, well, why not? So I did some research and found you and your website. And the thing that drew me to you and the Arcadia was that it was in Canada, which was close to where we were at the time. And so it wouldn't be as costly. It wasn't quite as scary for me because it wasn't as big of a deal as far as like plane tickets, costs, and all that. So I thought, all these things are starting to work out, be a little bit easier. I think that means we should give it a try. I looked into your website, everything that it was explaining about. We watched the documentary on Netflix about psilocybin.
How to change your mind?
How to Change Your Mind, yes.
Yeah.
That got me even more interested. It validated it more as like a less of a kooky thing, but more of a actually acceptable way to treat trauma and mental health issues and just, life issues. So that's how I got on board with it. And then once I talked to you, I felt very relaxed about it. And then I talked to Dan about it. He had watched the documentary with me and thought it was very interesting. So
I remember you said, well, Dan is interested, but he wants to talk to you first.
yes.
And so then, Dan, we had this meeting and you were like, well, my life is good. My marriage is good. Why would I want to do this? What if I want to live in a hut and sell my business and just kind of check out of life? And the thing I like to tell people that maybe don't understand that this isn't just for mental health conditions. This can just be to help you to kind of find your own path and clarity and heal in your own life, because we're all experiencing things. So we were kind of talking about how, if you related it to nutrition, if you ate bad every day and you didn't know what it felt like if you ate really good, you're like, wow, like life is good, but it could be this much better. So Dan, did you have any apprehension to coming to a retreat at all?
More than Don likes to describe. But it starts with the basis of the fact that I trust her, and she does the work when it comes to like mental and physical health and all that. She works overtime because she does it for herself, and she also does it for me. I tend to be pretty intense and focused and don't take a lot of time for that kind of stuff. So she takes care of that for me. I mean, when I get my breakfast in the morning, it's one of her homemade dirt smoothies that's good for me. She hands me a grip of supplements to take with it that she's done all the research on and says you need to take this, 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 and this. So I trust her when it comes to this. But yeah, I think we had that call with you just because it was a trust but verify kind of thing. Like I was looking back at my notes. I still have a legal pad full of notes that I took. Part of it was the journaling that you want us to do and like the pre-work that you wanted us to do. And I was going back through that the other day, and I wrote down a lot of things like, and you can see just in my notes how I go from being somewhat hesitant and not really sure about this to getting to be more like accepting. And then at some point, just kind of a like, what the fuck, whatever, let's just do this, excuse my language, but it was, and yeah, I mean, I wanted to talk to you. I didn't know if you were some like crazy hocus pocus lady that was going to have us wandering around with a tinfoil hat and being in a cult by the time this was all done. So,
Well, I guess that depends on your perspective. Some people think that's
you were,
cuckoo, but
yeah, you were very reassuring. So, yeah, I got to it sort of gradually, but mostly with encouragement from Dawn and like trusting that, you know, she was doing the work for us, and that brought me along with it. And some of it was like, we had a lot of good stuff going, and we still have a lot of good stuff going, but we were struggling with particularly how to deal with our son, and then I was, kind of at some crossroads stuff. So I was like, yeah, what the heck? Let's just try this and see what it does. I could use a few days off. So
So you guys both kind of came in without expectation, would you say?
I was more or less curious, is this really what it's what is this really what the documentary said it was about? And does this really work? Like how is this how does it work? And then kind of curious, like, well, if I experience it and understand it, then I can recommend it better for my son. So
Right.
yeah, that was.
I came in with zero expectations. And
Yeah.
I would say that you had more expectations going in, like things that you wanted to see happen and figure out or whatever. I think you had more expectations going in than I did. I had zero expectations. I didn't know what to expect. So I think part of my experience was also based on the fact that I had no expectations.
Yeah,
Which
I think that's fair to say. I watch more episodes than you or something.
You watched more episodes. You did a lot more
I
reading.
did more research. So I guess I was looking at other people's experiences and expecting those to be mine.
right. Which it wasn't.
Right. No, it wasn't.
No, you actually had a difficult time in the experience. Obviously, you went through the experience, you came to retreat. How did you guys feel when you arrived? I mean, I know that there was some feelings of discomfort because it's an uncomfortable situation to be in. You mind sharing a little bit about that?
One was like a physical aspect of it. I was actually the day before I realized that it was no, maybe it was a little bit sooner. Anyway, the place wasn't what I expected. I thought it would be quieter, more remote,
Hmm.
and then some of the I think the house wasn't what any of us expected.
Mhm.
The thing that made me feel better was actually meeting Danielle and Matt.
Right.
That was the other thing that worried me was what if I don't like these people?
Right. Just for everyone's knowledge, they were at a couples retreat, so there was 4 of you guys in total. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And you guys, and it was more comfortable once you were like, okay, we're gonna get along. It feels comfortable that way. Yeah.
Yes.
And sometimes I think that in life, we're in uncomfortable situations and it's not going to meet our expectations. And that can kind of simulate, it can kind of carry over into your life every day, right? So you have an expectation in your life, things don't work out as you hope, but you can still find some peace in that situation. And I think that's what it ended up being for you both. As far as the location, it was also new to me. So I was also unaware that it was going to be construction next door and everything, and of course pictures online always change things. But we both learned in that situation. So you're in the retreat and you just had your first psilocybin experience. How are you feeling at this point?
I felt disappointed, especially listening to the others' experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually, I'd say, mad that I didn't have one of theirs because that's what I was looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And mine was just, I couldn't stop crying. I felt awful. I felt terrible, uncomfortable, sad, mad, down on myself. Just tons of negative feelings.
Okay. And so your experience, was it that it didn't meet your expectations that you had from watching, say, the documentary? Or was it that it was revealing to yourself the truth about who you are and what you want in your life?
Right. Well, thanks to you, that's where I was led to go.
Right. Right.
I think if you hadn't been there, I would have just been like, this is dumb. This doesn't work. But yeah, with your help, I was able to see like that was what I needed. I needed to feel the grief and realize that there was a lot of stuff there that I hadn't been dealing with.
Yeah. And if you could describe yourself before, would you say like that you were somebody that was good at grieving, or would you hold everything inside?
I would say no, I was not good at feeling really any emotions that I didn't think were helpful.
You're good at feeling it. You just weren't good at expressing
Yeah, that would be true. Yeah.
That's part of what.
Well, I didn't always understand what I was feeling either.
That's,
Mm-hmm. What's
I
your
would let myself be happy, but I would not let myself be sad.
right? Because
I
in your family, if it's okay, I share, like we're taught not to express emotions. Like everything's good on the surface. You have to keep yourself together, right? So going through the experience really brings everything to the surface and helps you to really see that that's how you've been conditioned. And now it's safe and it's okay for you to express your emotions, because when we go through a psilocybin experience, they say it's the equivalent of 20 years of therapy. So whether or not you like it, those emotions are coming up, So the grieving was something that you had to do for probably most of your life. It was all coming to the surface.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And how about you, Dan?
afterwards, I felt very drained. So, like I said, I didn't have any super big expectations going in. Um, I'm generally somebody that likes to kind of be in control. I'm not a control freak, but I like to maintain sort of the environmental control around me. So um, for me, it was really a challenge to get into the experience. Like, we sat there and I could feel myself. I could feel myself going and slipping into the experience. And every time it got to the point where I was like jumping on the water slide to go down, I would grab myself and pull out and be like, "Oh no, no, don't! Just do this gradually. You can't just do it all at once." And that didn't work. So I got to a point during the experience, during the psilocybin, where just based on some things that I was seeing in that, I did decide to let go. And holy moly, like it was for me, it was very powerful. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't really have any expectations. But I think I described it afterwards to you and the others. It was like I felt like I had 40 plus years of paint stripped off me, just like sandblasted in that experience. And it's still like just thinking about it was like very, I don't know if cathartic is the word, because I mean I was a wreck. Like I was really emotional and just kind of let a lot of stuff out. Discovered some things about myself and um, my emotional journey that I didn't even realize, like some things that losses along the way, and not any like I would say like a major trauma of anything like that nature, but some things that happened in my life, trauma around me, and trauma to like parents and stuff that really impacted me. I mean, I'm an empathetic person. I know that. I never really wanted to ever announce that out loud, but I am. So, what the hell? Just go with it. I say that now, like I'm cool with saying it. But that all, like, there was a lot of stuff that I had absorbed over, 4 decades and built up inside of me that was defining who I was, or at least defining how I acted, especially to my loved ones and stuff. And like that just came completely out. And yeah, like you said, I processed 20 years of therapy in 2 hours or whatever. And so during the experience was pretty intense. And then that left me feeling both drained and refreshed at the same time afterwards. I felt like, okay, now what? We'll figure out the next part as we go forward. But at least I was feeling like I had gotten, I'd gotten a lot out. So
Yeah, for someone that, felt like everything was good, life is good, and then going into this experience and recognizing like how much maybe you weren't good. Maybe you were suppressing and pushing away and not actually experiencing or facing, or maybe even seeing your life through a different lens. Would that be accurate?
yeah, no, 100%. Like
Yeah.
I, my parents were both immigrants. They came over from Europe after the war, and uh, that defined who they were and how they were brought up. I mean, my dad was the only one in his large family to finish high school, and my mom never finished high school. So, like, they always had a pretty intense work ethic and all of that. And that helped me in many ways. It defined who I was. And so, a lot of those experiences kind of shaped who I was. But in the back of my mind, I was always like, well, I know I'm supposed to act this way, but I feel another way.
And I think we show up like so almost disconnected from our true self, like by our conditioning, right? So for you coming from an immigrant family, for you, Dawn, coming from a family that pushes all their emotions away, doesn't talk about their feelings, and probably both of you, even for you, like your parents coming from the war, didn't have time to talk about their feelings.
I mean, they were both younger, so they never experienced the war, but they, you know, the after effects of all that, and then, you know, uprooting an entire family and going to a different country across the ocean. I've learned more about their stories as I've gotten older, and even since our retreat, I've started to ask a lot more about, like, what was that like, Dad? Like, what was it like to literally be told your name is not going to be your name anymore? You're going to have a different name, and all that stuff. And yeah, it's shed a lot more light on why they are the way they are and why they raised us the way they did. So
Yeah. And I think that we all kind of have to look at our parents through that compassionate eye, because they're in their own cycle and they are doing the best they know how to do and love us the way they know how to love. And we can sit there and we can fault them for how we are, or we can look at it and understand, okay, they just did the best they could and they just weren't able to give me what I needed. I think we're all just in this learning, right? So now you guys are doing this inner work and you've shifted how you feel inside, and you've been able to now express yourself in a different way. And so since the retreat, has your life changed, or have you changed individually?
Yeah, I found myself just interested in a lot more of the deeper spirituality. Um, I I was brought up in the church, so I was brought up in a sort of a spirituality, but I feel like it just wasn't a very deep one. And so then after the retreat, I felt more like I want to know more about so many things that I was actually not really, I wouldn't say not allowed to look into, but just dissuaded from. Like, ooh, that's a slippery slope. You don't want to do that because that might lead you to Satan worship or something like that. There's a very thick line of that you just don't cross. Like, this is who we are. This is what we believe. That stuff is over there, and it's not. We don't go there. I learned a lot more just from like the Buddhist teachings and stuff, how helpful those are, and how deeply spiritual those teachings are, and helpful with mental health even. I felt freer to go down a lot of roads I was not allowed to go down before. And I struggled with how I was brought up religiously. I felt like, hey, you didn't tell me everything I could have known that could have really benefited me in my life.
Yeah.
You know, I felt like the church kept things from me, or, their parishioners that really are helpful and should be out there and used for mental health, for life.
Did you get over the grief and come to a better relationship with yourself at this point?
I feel like I'm getting there, but I feel like I'm not there yet. There's a lot of old ways that easily come back that I need to keep working on. Mm-hmm.
Is it easy for you to kind of recognize now and then shift where maybe before you wouldn't see it?
Yeah, I'd say so. I'm glad I did it with Dan, because he is able sometimes, and he's always been this way, to see things that I don't see about myself. He is helpful sometimes, like, you seem a little off. And I'll be like, I'm fine. But then, right, instead of just dismissing it like I did before, I would be like, he might be right. Let me start thinking about this a little bit more.
you have to tread lightly in those observations.
He actually might get a not literal, but slap in the face, like, I'm fine, leave me alone.
Right.
But I will then start to think, maybe I'm not, maybe I do need to step back and see what's going on here.
But are you getting more comfortable with being uncomfortable?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I'm getting there. I at least realize that I need to be sometimes.
Okay. I think the integration process is a process in itself. Like, it's one thing to come to a retreat and have an experience in psilocybin, but the real work happens when you go home. Mm-hmm. And for you left really confused because everything that you knew of yourself felt like it had almost been shattered, right? So it's like rebuilding yourself now as the truer version of you, of the one that feels more comfortable to express herself and to honor herself when she is feeling down, which is normal for all of us. We're all going to have our bad days. But to be comfortable to sit in that and like feel it and just give yourself permission, right?
You're learning that observations don't necessarily have to be personal attacks. In the past, you would tend to take an observation as like a personal attack, like, oh, there's something about me you don't like, or
Yeah, so that means there's something wrong with me.
yeah.
Right, right. Because you're not showing up perfect. You're showing up off. So now, yeah, so then you would internalize that and be like, what have I done wrong? But now you can see that that's not the case, right?
Right.
Amazing. Well, I mean, that it sounds like that's a really positive shift for you.
Mhm.
Yeah. How about you, Dan? You could compare yourself before psilocybin to now. What is the biggest shift you've noticed?
The way I process things. So it took me a little bit longer. Um, so initially coming out of it, I would describe kind of a pink cloud feeling. I was feeling pretty excited and coming off like a high from the experience and some of the stuff I learned. It took me a little bit to figure out, okay, how do I apply that to my life? One of the things I say, if I had any sort of expectation going in, it would be to understand why I use alcohol to address things or whatever. And I mean, I'm not a fall down drunk or anything like that, but I would use alcohol as like a numbing agent. Like I don't, want to deal with these issues with my son, or there's a lot of frustrations around the COVID stuff, and he was in school, and there was just a lot of frustrations. I mean, anybody that went through that time in America or the world in general, but especially America, we were all frustrated with the way things were going, and I would I would address that by drinking. So that was my go-to to relax, but it only exacerbated things. And it took me a little while to kind of process through that and figure some of that stuff out. And then we were there in the summer of 2023 is when we did our retreat. And then I went the entire year 2024 with no alcohol. I want to say, okay, I'm going to set this aside. I'm not going to make this part of my life for now. I want to see how that goes. And that really helped too, because that took away any external like influence on how I might be processing things. I also working with you. I started to do the microdosing. You recommended some places to look at, so I've been doing microdosing on a regular basis. I mean, on a routine basis, and I think that's also helped as well. So I would say now I think I process things much differently. I recognize now like I was really quick to get angry about stuff and get it really intense about something and be like, all right, I'm going to put all my intensity, and the intensity often manifested itself as anger. And I'm going to put all of that into addressing this. And a lot of times that was just like pouring gasoline on fire. So I think what I see different in me is the way I address things and the way I show up for a problem or any sort of instance, and then how that makes me feel throughout that challenge. And then afterwards, like, I just I don't maybe I just don't have as many shits to give in my life as I used to, but I just
Right.
don't care as much anymore. Can we swear on your podcast?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. No problem.
Um, so I just don't seem like it's not like I don't care, but I don't let these things affect me the way they used to. And that's been the biggest change, is just probably living a more, I still go like this, but I don't go like, not as
Big
mercurial
ones. Yeah.
reaction to things.
That's pretty consistent with most people. Most people notice that how they show up in the face of adversity or challenge is very different. They don't get as upset about things, and that's pretty consistent. And so, would you say that you use, like you mentioned, like you used alcohol as a numbing agent, but now do you feel like you are like are you using anything else as a numbing agent, or do you feel like you're just okay to feel how you're feeling and you're processing it a lot easier? Like, what do you think that is for you now that's shifted with alcohol?
Some of it is just, yeah, being okay with not being okay. Like something's really troubling. Just environmental circumstances or with our son or whatever. And it's, it's okay to just feel that and to just let it be. Like, I don't have to go in and fix everything. But me trying to run in and, intensely try to fix everything is not helpful to anybody. So part of it is just learning how to just pull back and let things be. And then I've also gotten more intense in like meditation. I'm not super good still at just sitting down and meditating, like staring out a window meditating, but I've really embraced like sauna therapy and cold water therapy. Like that's my meditation. Like I can go in a sauna, and I still have the playlist that you gave us when we were there, and that's what I meditate to. And it brings back a lot of some of the same similar feelings and emotions when certain songs will play. And for me, if I go sit in a sauna for 20 minutes with that playlist, like that time will go by like lickety split. So I've learned to process and deal with things differently, and then brought in like sauna meditation, and then been pretty consistently doing like the cold water therapy, the cold water plunges. I don't know if you've never done that before, but like there's a real discipline in like immersing yourself in 40-degree water for 4 or 5 minutes and not freaking out. Like, it's not comfortable, right? But you can sit there, you can learn to just breathe deeply, power through the discomfort temporarily, and then just be in the moment and say, like, this is not going to last forever. Like, I'm going to be okay, and then while I'm here, I'm going to, in a weird twisted way, sort of enjoy this feeling of refreshing and therapy. So that's been how I've learned. That's how the change I've made is like doing those sorts of physical things, and then also just learning to pull back and not be so intense about everything.
I think that what you just stated around like the cold water therapy is a beautiful metaphor for life, especially in those times that it's really challenging, to like just to sit. It's not going to last forever. Just know that, the light is going to come again and that you're going to be able to move through it. And I think it's really amazing that you were able to replace something like alcohol with something more positive, like the cold water and therapy and the sauna. I think it's just shifting how you feel, how you show up for yourself. And ultimately, it's about the difference in the relationship that we have with ourselves. I think that I'm not sure if you guys can attest to this, but for myself, I would say that I'm a totally different person because I love myself in a different way. I accept myself in a different way, and I feel safe to be myself. Are working through the condition of religion, of society, of family, how we've been taught to show up, but we can finally just tune into, how do I want to show up? How am I? Who am I? Like, just being, instead of always thinking about how should I answer that question that's gonna be in line with the values that I've been taught.
I would say before the retreat and before the work that we did, I felt like my life was a vice grip, and I was in a vice grip, and it kept getting tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter, and it was not good. After the going through that experience and processing the things we did like very intensely there on the island, and then afterwards the work that I've done, like, I don't feel that way. I don't feel like I'm in a vice grip anymore.
You're still living the same life. You're still having the same challenges with your son. It's just the difference is that you guys are feeling different and you're showing up differently in your life.
That also didn't happen overnight. Like, we have, I think, worked together. We relied on each other. There's sometimes where I'm not capable of dealing with whatever stuff was coming out of his mental health stuff and addiction stuff. I wasn't real good at dealing with it, and Dawn would step in and kind of take the lead. And then there was other times where she just needed a break, and I would. And it was never like scripted. We never like, okay, it's your turn today to address this issue. It was just kind of, we recognized that you know sometimes one or the other of us was a little bit stronger in that moment to deal with certain things. It just feels like overall it's not as intense as it used to be.
And how about your relationship? Has it shifted at all?
I'd say, well, definitely a better way. I feel like we are more open with each other, especially me. I think I'm still not very comfortable with being vulnerable. I would rather laugh, have fun, do something fun or not do anything and just be by myself, being more brave to do that and then having Dan be supportive of that has been very, very helpful for our relationship.
We had a pretty good relationship, but it was probably on a sort of a pattern cruise control, maybe. That most people that have been married for 25 plus years and have raised 3 kids and probably find themselves in similar situations. We feel like the last year or so we really learned to talk about more things that we wouldn't have talked about before, and then the way we process stuff. I've never really had a problem with people being honest with me as long as I love them and respect them. Like, you can be as honest as you want. Like, if Don tells me like, you are really being an asshole, I'd be like, yeah, you probably weren't wrong. If I were to say something like that to you, you would take it like it was not cool. Like, you would not.
No, I would be crushed. Like, oh my goodness, I did that all wrong.
Be like, you would kind of almost lash out back at me to put up a defense
Yeah.
mechanism.
Right.
Yeah.
And I have learned in large part to communicate some of that stuff differently. But also, I think we're more willing to be honest and vulnerable with each other. So.
Yeah. I kept thinking of the word open. Like, I just feel more open.
Okay.
Open to learning new things, open to feeling new things. And it's not great. It's still, I have a lot of room to grow. I feel like after the retreat, I just felt more open.
Thank you for sharing all of that. As we're finishing up, I just wanted to ask you both, if you had the opportunity to choose again, would you have chosen to come to the retreat?
Oh yes, 100%. I'm very glad that we did that.
Yeah, 100. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were talking earlier. Again, showing up there, there's a lot of unknown. I don't think either one of us would be described as like we're super extrovert. Like, we just love to go out and meet a bunch of new people, and especially live in a house with them for 4 days or whatever. So that was a bit uncomfortable, but that turned out to be really amazing part of it. Learned a lot from them as part of it. Some of the things that were like maybe a little irritating at the beginning of the first few days, I found as the week went on, like that became part of the experience. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Maybe come down to Mexico next time.
Yes,
Not the
absolutely.
island, but we love Mexico too. So
Yeah, no, it's a totally different experience here.
Yeah. And I remember thinking afterwards, everyone should do this.
my mom and dad need to do it.
Oh,
Your
yeah.
mom and dad, everybody. This person, tap the brakes, honey. Not everybody. You got to go into it with the right mindset.
I just feel like I don't see how this couldn't be helpful for anyone.
No, this is not a sales pitch for Tara, but you did a great job too of like, at first I thought, well, she's not really doing much. She's just kind of setting the stage for everything. And I thought you would be more like a professor in front of the class. Like, here's what we're gonna do, and you're gonna do this, and you're gonna do this, and you're gonna do this. And I remember thinking like, oh, she's pretty hands off on this thing. But I realize now, like, that was an important part of the approach. So you did a great job of making things comfortable. The food was tremendous, and we actually learned a lot just eating some of the food. Having Kish there was cool. He was kind of a little therapy dog. So that was fun. And yeah, you made it a great experience. We never wanted for anything. So we didn't have to think about those sorts of things. And the way you sort of gave us some space at first to figure things out, and then became more hands-on, I think, as the week went on, is maybe you got to know us too. Like, that was smart on your part to not just jump in and a couple of people that you really only have met through email and a couple of Zoom calls. You kind of let all that play out before you've worked our relationships in together and with you and all that. So.
Yeah, I do try to stand back a bit and just let you guys kind of get oriented, because I know it can be very uncomfortable. Once you have the experience with psilocybin, now this is kind of like where I'll come in. Okay, like, I'm holding space for you. I'm helping keep you safe. I'm allowing psilocybin to do its work, because ultimately, you're connecting with it. So if I come into your experience while you're having a psilocybin trip, I'm interrupting that flow. And I'm just there to support if you need extra tissues, if you need water, if you need to talk about something, I'm there for you. But the real work starts after and into the integration, and kind of just piecing together, what is it that I experienced did my intention get met, which is most of the times before we go into the experience, we set an intention. And if you don't see it, I help you to connect those dots. And then how are we going to apply this into your life moving forward? Because the real work begins when you leave here. So my approach is, through a lot of trial and error and experience. That's really what this is for me. I'm learning from you guys just as much as you're learning from me or from the medicine. So I think it's just this opportunity for us just to grow within ourselves. Thank you for that. Thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing so openly. And I have a really good feeling that this is going to help someone maybe see that maybe this is something they can explore for themselves, even if they're not struggling with depression or anxiety or any mental illness. Like, it can still be really beneficial for how you're showing up every day in your life, and just kind of getting clarity around yourself and the world around you.
If you got anybody that's kind of in a similar situation as we're in and is kind of thinking about whether they want to do this or not, at least for me, you can give them my name and contact information. I'm happy to talk to somebody.
Thank you. Thanks so much for being here.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode of Redefining Love. If you're enjoying what you're hearing and you're finding benefit in it, if you could rate and review this podcast, it would mean so much to me, and it will only further help me to push this out and share these messages with the world. And on another note, if you guys want to connect with me, my Instagram handle, my YouTube page, it's all in the show notes. Please go ahead, add me, send me a DM, tell me how much you're loving this podcast. And I really look forward to connecting more with you, to sharing really valuable content that's only going to positively impact your life. So until next week, talk to you soon.